But I think what's important is to, and this is maybe the engineer in me,
Right.
is going down to look at the root causes of the issues that we're addressing and address those. If all we're doing is slapping a Band-Aid on a problem, that problem is not going to get solved. It's going to resurface in a year, 5 years, 10 years. My background kind of reflects the experience of many Armenian Americans growing up, especially in places where there weren't a whole lot of Armenians in the area. The Armenian government should be able to do more, and we wish it could do more to help, especially in these rural areas that are often the people in those areas feel ignored and isolated.
You've been here for about 5 years now. How has Armenia changed you?
It's humbled me. Many of the preconceptions that I had about Armenia melted away over time. I love it more than I did when I came. Let's put it that way.
That's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
Welcome to Conversations with the Tufenkian Foundation, where we speak with the people and partners shaping Armenia's future from the ground up. On today's episode, it is my great pleasure to be joined by Greg Bedian, the director of the Tufenkian Foundation. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Rupen. Thanks for having me here today.
Of course. Greg moved to Armenia at one of the most difficult times for Armenia's modern history, at the start of the 2020 Artsakh War. And since then, over the past 5 years, he's helped steer the foundation through a period of both adaptation and strategic growth. Greg brings over 30 years of experience of engineering in the tech world at companies like Motorola, Ubiquiti, to the Tufenkian Foundation, which is really a rare mix of technical know-how and his background in community life, of course, in the Armenian American community, where we met about a decade ago. Today, we'll be talking about the foundation's present, but also its future, about the huge project in Syunik, in the Syunik province, in Sevarans, where a whole neighborhood was built by the foundation, and about post-war integration, and more generally, what it means to build long-term resilience in Armenia following the Artsakh War. And folks listening, as always, you can find this and other episodes of Conversations with the Tufenkian Foundation on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Greg, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's talk about your background. Before joining the foundation, you were deeply involved in the Armenian American community, within community life there. You were an activist within the community, but you also had this professional life as an engineer. In the private sector, you were, like I mentioned, a part of really big companies. So both professionally and in terms of your community life and activism, tell us a little bit about your background and how that eventually led to full-time employment and a move to Armenia.
I think my background kind of reflects the experience of many Armenian Americans growing up, especially in places where there weren't a whole lot of Armenians in the area. I grew up, my Armenian community was in Granite City, Illinois, and so my Armenian life was pretty much restricted to weekends. And so during the week, I was surrounded by the non-Armenian Odar culture, going to school, what have you. And so similarly, I had the balancing these two dissimilar worlds, if you will. Now here in Armenia, and as an Armenian activist in the United States, again, I had one foot in the Odar world and one foot in the Armenian world, and so I was constantly having to balance those two different and very diverse areas. I think one of the things that helped me prepare for my life in the Armenian community and my life here, especially working for the foundation, was growing up in a small community. We were fairly isolated from any other communities. The closest community was 300 miles away. And we had to do everything ourselves. We couldn't rely on anyone else to come help us, whether that was providing us with educational presentations, learning how to dance, or anything else. Everything we did was within our community. And we also wore many hats. We didn't have the opportunity to become specialized in Armenian culture or athletics or the church or any other aspects of the community. We had to work in all aspects of the community, whether we liked it or not. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had a community. And so that experience kind of gave me a broad general knowledge of how communities function, in the diaspora, but that was also very helpful in understanding how communities function here in Armenia as well, especially small village communities. And so I was able to transplant some of that knowledge and experience that I didn't know I was preparing myself for. But coming here in Armenia, I began to see the parallels between living in a small Armenian community in the United States and living in a small rural community in Armenia.
And coming at a really pivotal time for the country, for the nation, really. A lot of things have changed, of course, since you moved here in September, I believe, 2020, right before the war. So what was going through your mind at the time? I think if I remember correctly, I remember you telling me that the war started probably a few days after you moved. What was going through your mind at the time, and how did that help shape your strategy for the foundation? Because you started working right after moving.
Yes, I did. It's interesting. The job I was coming over for was to be doing development in Kashatagh and other parts of Artsakh. And unfortunately, when I got to Armenia, 2 days later, the war started. And this was in the midst of COVID as well. So it was a completely different world at that time than the world we live in today. The immediacy of the war really kind of brought to light the importance of the work that we do. Prior to the war, I came in thinking, okay, we're going to do community development, we're going to do some agricultural, economic development, we're going to help out, people improve their healthcare and things. But the war actually made things, sharply into focus that this is people's lives were at stake. Armenia's lives was at stake. It was an existential struggle for Artsakh and Armenia, and it still is. And so that just drew much more importance to the work that we were doing and the impact that we needed to have in order for Armenia to continue to progress and thrive.
And if I remember correctly, the work on the ground shifted drastically. I mean, the foundation started becoming involved in things that it hadn't really done in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about those days?
Sure. When I first got here, one of the primary needs was to interface with the foreign journalists. There were many foreign war correspondents that were entering Armenia as the war started and became more serious. And a flood of these journalists came. Many of them, of course, had no knowledge of the Armenian language. They didn't know anything about the country geographically or otherwise. And so how they would get to Artsakh, what they would do when they were in Artsakh, who they needed to talk to in Artsakh to be able to go to talk to people involved with the battles or actually see the front lines. All of these things were a big question mark. And so the foundation immediately jumped into action. Fortunately, we had experience dealing with the press in the 2016 war, and its aftermath. And so consequently, we had some connections. There were some journalists that were calling us for assistance. And so we engaged people like the Armenian Tourist Association to find translators and drivers for these journalists so they could get to Artsakh, and they had translators so they could actually speak to people and get firsthand information about what was going on. After that, we were also, of course, helping with the many refugees that were coming out of Hadrut and other places. We were also providing other technical and physical support for the people that were in Artsakh. And then following the ceasefire, we immediately got to work with an ad hoc group of art historians and art experts, cultural experts, heritage experts, to go and document the monuments and the churches and other important sites in Artsakh that were going to be handed over in the 2 weeks following the peace agreement. So we were really deeply engaged in working with the Artsakh government, working with these experts that had identified which places needed to be documented. And we would send out teams that did 3D scanning and gathering photometric data, all kinds of efforts like that. As soon as the territories were handed over to Azerbaijan, we consulted with the Artsakh government to find out where we could now play, because prior to this, we were active in Kashatagh, which unfortunately was lost during the war.
In resettlement projects.
In resettlement projects, yes, but initially we were just helping to feed people because these refugees that had left Artsakh during the war had now come back, and they had lost all of their opportunity for harvest. Many of them had lost their animals. Their houses were damaged because of shrapnel or artillery, etc. And so we helped these families first with food, and then also help them repair their homes, and also help some of the communities repair their community buildings, because those were also damaged during the war. And then after that initial period in the spring of 2021, we began to work on resettlement of the Hadrut and Shushi refugees to come and find a new place to live in Artsakh. And so we worked specifically in the southern Marduni region, from the village of Herdher to Machkalashen, and worked in those areas and trying to resettle people into those areas.
And fast forward 5 years, I mean, a lot has changed, of course. No Armenians left in Artsakh today, but the Tufenkian Foundation is still at the forefront of resettlement. And just last month, there was the ribbon cutting ceremony and house handovers in Severance. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So after the displacement, we got together and had to decide what we as a foundation were going to do. Certainly, our decades of experience and ties to Artsakh were things that we wanted to continue. But we also realized that now the Artsakh communities were scattered all over Armenia, and there was a very big need for housing. We also understood that there was a need for collective resettlement as well. Having the Artsakhs scattered like this, without an ability to bring them together in some way, shape, or form, was going to put their culture at risk, their distinct culture at risk, which has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we felt it was important to resettle these Artsakh collectively in communities. We also saw that there wasn't anybody working in the rural area. We felt it was essential for the Artsakh villagers to be able to be resettled in villages in Armenia in order for them to become self-sufficient at a much faster rate. We didn't have to retrain them. We didn't have to reskill them. We just needed to provide them with the opportunities that they needed, with some agricultural resources to help them get back on their feet. So that was a key concern for us, as was the thought that Artsakhs, the village Artsakhs, would, if they remain in rural areas, once they have the opportunity to return to their homeland, to Artsakh, they would be able to go and return to their villages and again become productive villagers in their homes. And so we didn't want the agricultural experiences of the Artsakh villagers to be lost by having them move to Yerevan or Vanats or Gyumri or other places and become city dwellers. We wanted to help them retain their rural heritage.
Right, and their know-how and their practices, definitely.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned some of the most vulnerable areas of both Armenia and Artsakh. I mean, Tufenkian's done work in places that have significant poverty, in border villages, resettled communities, and regions that have really suffered following war and displacement. Do you ever feel like civil society here in Armenia is being asked to fill a gap or a void that the state should be handling? And how do you keep your focus on the work amid some of those challenges or those gaps?
It's a huge challenge. The Armenian government should be able to do more, and we wish it could do more to help, especially in these rural areas that are often the people in those areas feel ignored and isolated. And so for civil society, it's a huge task. In any country in the world, especially trying to help out rural communities, it's tough. But in Armenia, with all the various pressures that the country has, and unfortunately the focus of the central government and the fact that it's a centralized governmental system as opposed to a decentralized system, that also has an impact on the outlying regions, that they don't necessarily always get the attention that they need. So civil society is forced to take on some of those responsibilities, and we do the best we can with assistance from other organizations and other entities from the international community.
Yeah, tell us more about some of those partnerships.
So we've been, in our development of Severance and through our experience in Artsakh, we recognize that we are not the end-all, be-all. There's plenty of other organizations that have much more important technical expertise, financial resources, and other knowledge that we lack. And fortunately, we can recognize our areas of strength and our areas of opportunity. And so we've reached out and partnered with several United Nations organizations, the UN World Food Program, UN Development Program. We're looking at partnering with some of their other agencies. We've also worked with a number of different other international organizations. We're talking to the French Embassy, the Swiss Embassy, the Caucasus Nature Fund, and other non-Armenian organizations as well. We also have partnerships with local Armenian organizations or diasporan organizations. We just planted over 2,500 trees with the Armenian Tree Project in Sevarans to not only provide fruit trees to the resettlers, but also to provide fruit trees to the people that are in the village themselves, so that they can also improve their economic position and to make the place a greener place. So we have a lot of different partnerships with a lot of different organizations. I wish I could list them all at this point, but we have time constraints, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you mentioned diasporan organizations. You as a diasporan coming into Armenia, of course, with that diasporan perspective. It'd be interesting for us to hear what you think the diaspora and diasporans' role should be in Armenia. I mean, you came, like we mentioned, at a very difficult time. And I don't necessarily like using the word repatriation here, but do you think the diaspora has a role to play in Armenia?
Of course it does. It has a very significant role to play in Armenia. Armenia has so many needs, and the diaspora can help fill those needs. But as diasporans, we have to be careful in that we are, there's the saying that you can give a man a fish or you can teach him to fish. And in this case, Armenia has often the diaspora has often given Armenia fish.
Right.
And the diaspora really needs to provide guidance and support and to help the Armenian people solve their own problems. They have to give them that education, that training, the access to networks and experience and funding to make things happen. At the same time, Armenian diasporans have a lot of different kinds of cultural expertise, if you will. And I don't necessarily mean Armenian heritage culture. I mean organizational culture, business culture that needs to be shared and provided to the local people here in Armenia. I think the key, though, is that all of this has to be done in concert with the beneficiaries. We can't just come in and say, oh, there's a need, let's fill that need.
Right.
What's important is that we sit down and work together with the people of Armenia, whether it's the government or whether it's a small farmer, and to understand their needs, to help them understand why they have those needs, and then come up with solutions on how they can address those needs.
Right, because otherwise there can be a disconnect, and we've seen that happen in a lot of really difficult times for the country. I mean, these wars and natural disasters over the years have been points of and rallying cries really for the Armenian nation, but so many gaps existed over the years during those times. And that being said, you mentioned different types of culture being brought into Armenia, maybe perhaps like international best practices and so forth. But working in Armenia, and I'm sure you can attest to this, often means navigating different value systems, whether that's cultural or political, institutional, working habits. How have you managed these moments? Have there been moments of tension, perhaps? What are some of the disconnects? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the bright spots, perhaps, that you've noticed over the past 5 years?
Well, I think there's obviously a lot of tensions that exist. There's completely different mindsets in many cases. I think what's key is to find consensus, to find opportunities for everyone to agree on a particular part of whatever work that's being done. We're not going to agree on everything.
Right.
The people in the diaspora don't have all the answers, and certainly the people in Armenia, unfortunately, don't have all the answers either.
Right, and people in the diaspora all can't agree, so,
That's true as well.
Yeah.
But I think what's important is to, and this is maybe the engineer in me,
Right.
is going down to look at the root causes of the issues that we're addressing and address those. If all we're doing is slapping a Band-Aid on a problem, that problem is not going to get solved. It's going to resurface in a year, 5 years, 10 years. But if we address the fundamental reasons why these problems are here, then we can address those problems and move on to other problems to solve, as opposed to just trying to fix the same problem over and over again.
Speaking of new problems to solve, let's look ahead and speak about what you see as some of the biggest opportunities or challenges facing the foundation, but also more broadly, Armenia and the Armenian nation.
I think for the foundation, as you said, we've been through a lot of changes over the last 5 years. The war, the aftermath of the war, the blockade, the displacement, and now the situation that we're facing today. There are so many different problems to address. The foundation tends to stay in a space where others don't play,
Right.
either geographically or as a sphere. We often try to go to places that other people, for whatever reason, are not present. I think the longer term big challenges for Armenia rely in every sphere, but particularly in places like education, healthcare, economic development. For example, Armenia imports a lot of food, even though about half of the land in Armenia is uncultivated. There's fundamental reasons for that. There's needs for land reform. There's the ongoing problems of a lack of investment in rural communities that force people to eventually have to leave because they can't find good schools, they can't find good health care. These are issues that drive decisions by anyone. It's not necessarily particular to Armenia or Armenians, but these are issues that need to be addressed by both the Armenian government and the diaspora. We can't always look to build a school and slap the donor's name on it and think that we're done with the job.
Right. It can be a Band-Aid solution.
It is a Band-Aid solution. If there aren't fundamental changes in how education is delivered in Armenia, having a nice school and a nice school building is not going to move things forward. And obviously, it helps to have good infrastructure.
Sure.
I'm not complaining about
Right.
that, but we have to understand that the job doesn't stop there, and that job is a much harder job than just going through the construction of a building. And so we really need to be focused on how do we continue to get impact, and look at a building or look at other aspects as a resource as opposed to a solution.
That being said, if you had that magic wand that you could just wave and say solve a critical issue within perhaps the development world or in philanthropy in Armenia, what would that be?
I think the fundamental, probably two. I need a couple of magic wands.
That's
Rupen,
fine.
I'm sorry.
One in each hand.
I think that one of them has to be that for our diasporans coming here to Armenia is to work with the beneficiaries and understand their needs and understand what the root cause of those needs are, and address those needs. If we don't address these root cause problems, we're not gonna solve anything here.
Right, and the solutions remain superficial.
Superficial, absolutely. I think the other really big need here in Armenia is the need to understand processes and understand planning. It's because of the influence of the Soviet Union for so long here. One of the biggest challenges that we've faced is the difficulty in having plans move forward and understanding the processes. To go and be able to say, okay, to get from A to Z, what are the steps in between? And not just say, okay, I finished A, now let's look at B. There's opportunities to do things in parallel. There's opportunities to understand we're not going to get there unless we get additional resources. So we have to start working on these resources now so that in a year or in a month, we have all the things we need to be able to do the job. This goes for the government. This goes for the international agencies. This goes for the the small NGOs, foundations such as ourselves, in working with the Armenian community here, in working with the Armenian government. Planning is key. Organization is key, and if we can develop those skills very quickly with my magic wand, that would be
Two magic wands.
That's the other magic wand. I think that's the area that I would really think would have a big impact on Armenia going forward.
Thank you, Greg. And I guess we can end off on a personal note. I mean, as diasporans, we often hear about coming into Armenia, wanting to change something in Armenia, but oftentimes we're the ones who change. You've been here for about 5 years now. How has Armenia changed you?
It's humbled me. Many of the preconceptions that I had about Armenia melted away over time. I love it more than I did when I came. Let's put it that way.
That's a good thing.
It's a very good thing, and I wish more people could experience that. For me, I think the opportunity that I speak to young people about when I encounter them, both the visitors here in Armenia and when I go back to the United States, is that Armenia has an opportunity for anyone and everything. The needs are so great, whether it's in high tech, in business, in healthcare, in social services, in politics, in diplomacy, in history, heritage, any area that a diaspora and Armenian wants to excel in, they can come to Armenia and excel. It's not going to be easy.
Sure.
It's going to be financially challenging because living in Armenia is not exactly the most economically promising place.
No.
However, it's certainly very satisfying.
Right.
Despite the difficulties, and sometimes you feel like you're bumping your head up against the wall and pulling your hair out, what I have left.
Same here.
But I think that it's an opportunity for people to become a big fish in a small pond
Right.
and have an impact in whatever field that they choose. Whereas if you're in the United States or in Canada or in Western Europe, it's much more difficult to become recognized and accomplished in your field. Here in Armenia, there's different challenges, but it's very possible to have an impact, to see for yourself with your own eyes the changes that you were able to make in people's lives. And I think that's the one message I can give to my brother and sister diasporans is that you can see with your own eyes the impact that you can have if you're willing to put the time in and you have the will and the grit and the patience to move things forward.
Thank you, Greg, for the insightful conversation, and thank you for listening. Just as a reminder, we were speaking with Greg Bedian, the director of the Tufenkian Foundation, and you can hear this and other episodes of Conversations with the Tufenkian Foundation on the Tufenkian Foundation YouTube page, on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to our next conversation.